This year Jimin surprised us with his second solo album MUSE. The pre-release single Smeraldo Garden Marching Band, which features the South Korean rapper Loco, was the fastest song by a Korean act and the fastest act overall to reach #1 on iTunes USA in 2024. The fastest song of 2024 to achieve 100 #1s on iTunes worldwide, surpassing Never Let Go by JK. Jimin made history becoming the fastest act to hit #1 on iTunes in 100 countries with 3 songs. It was also the fastest song in 2024 to top iTunes in 8 major markets all kill, surpassing B's Friends. Jimin simultaneously occupied #1 on iTunes UK song and music video chart, the only Korean act charting inside the top 10, debuted #1 in China on QQ Music. With only a few minutes, Jimin secured the best-selling EP of that week. SGMB had the biggest debut on Pandora by a Korean soloist in 2024. It was the #1 best-selling song on Amazon US in multiple categories. SGMB debuts straight to #1 on Japan's Oricon Daily Digital Singles Chart. Jimin earned the highest daily chart debut position for a Korean act on Tidal Daily Top Videos USA as SGMB debuted at #2. It broke the record as the highest and biggest song debut by a Korean act on Spotify US Daily Top Songs chart in 2024. At the time, SGMB also achieved the highest and biggest debut by an Asian act on Spotify Global Daily Top Songs chart in 2024. It also set a record for the biggest debut for a Korean song by a solo artist. SGMB also had the biggest debut by a Korean act on the Spotify counter in 2024. SGMB earned Jimin his biggest debut song on Spotify counter, surpassing Like Crazy. It debuted at #7 on UK Big Top 40 with only 2 days of tracking. SGMB also debuted at #1 on both UK official singles downloads and sales chart. It also had the biggest debut for a Korean song by a K-soloist on the Spotify Global Weekly chart. Jimin earned the biggest first-week song debut by an Asian and K-pop act in 2024 on Spotify counter. It also debuted #88 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. This was Jimin's 5th career solo entry on the chart in the first of 2024. It was also Loco's first ever entry on this chart. The album MUSE itself reached #1 on UK iTunes album chart and was the only album by a K-pop soloist to achieve this feat in 2024. With MUSE reaching #1 on iTunes US, Jimin was the first and only Korean act in 2024 to have 2 albums reach this feat. At the time of its release, MUSE broke the record for the biggest first-day sales for a Korean soloist on Hanteo in 2024. MUSE ended its first day on the Hanteo chart with 731,114 copies sold. This was after this chart froze only for Jimin for 6 hours. In those 6 hours, they only added around 1,000 sales. Something similar with his sales being deleted already happened with his Face album. At the time, Jimin's MUSE earned the biggest debut for a K-pop album on Spotify in 2024. Jimin debuts the entirety of his new album MUSE on global Spotify. Jimin's MUSE claimed the top spot on Spotify's top albums debut global chart, and 4th in the USA chart. MUSE by Jimin debuted at #1 on Japan's Billboard Download Albums chart. MUSE by Jimin is now the most streamed album of 2024 by a Korean act on Spotify. MUSE debuted at #2 on Billboard 200 with 96,000 units, making Jimin the first Korean soloist to have multiple #2 albums in history. It also ties as the highest charting album by a K-pop soloist in Billboard 200 history. Jimin made history as the first and only K-pop soloist ever to enter multiple albums in the top 3 on the chart. MUSE received double platinum certification by the Korea Music Association for over 500,000 units sold on Circle chart. MUSE has also surpassed 900,000 copies on the Circle album chart. MUSE reached a new peak at #1 on the Billboard World Album chart. Jimin is now the second Korean soloist in history with the most #1 on the Billboard World Albums chart. MUSE is now the most streamed album by a K-pop soloist in US Spotify history. MUSE is now the longest charting 2024 album by a K-act on Billboard 200. Jimin now has the 2 longest charting albums on the Billboard World Albums chart in history. Jimin's MUSE has now surpassed 2 billion streams on Spotify, the first and only 2024 album by a Korean act to reach this milestone. Jimin becomes the first and only Korean soloist to have multiple albums surpassing 2 billion streams on Spotify. The album's lead single Who is Jimin's first solo song to top the Billboard Global 200, debuting with 90.5 million streams and 129,000 copies sold worldwide in its initial week, at that time making it the biggest pure sales week of 2024. Who broke Like Crazy's record as the biggest solo song debut by a K-soloist on Spotify Global Daily Top Songs chart history. The song debuted at #3 with 7.9 million filtered streams. Who remained at #1 and broke the record as the first solo song by a K-soloist to achieve over 10 million streams on Spotify Global Daily Top Songs chart history. On Spotify Global Weekly Top Songs chart, who debuted at number 1 and broke the record of the biggest solo song debut by a K-soloist, who also remained at number 1 in the second week and broke its own record of the biggest weekly solo song stream by a K-soloist on Spotify Global Weekly Top Songs chart in history. The song earned almost 65 million streams in its second week, 7.9 million more than its debut week. Jimin is now the first and only Korean act to have 2 songs with over 900 million streams in Spotify Global Chart history. These are filtered streams, it doesn't get more organic than that. Who debuted with 9.99 million unfiltered streams on the Spotify counter for July 19, 2024. It's the biggest debut by a K-act in 2024 and the biggest solo song debut by a Korean soloist in Spotify history. Who became the first solo song by a K-pop artist to spend 2 weeks at number 1 in global Spotify history. Who by Jimin is now officially the longest charting solo song at number 1 by an Asian act in Spotify Global Charts history, surpassing Glimpse of Us by Joji, who extended its own record as the first and only solo song by a Korean soloist in history to spend multiple weeks at number 1 on Spotify Global Weekly Chart. Jimin's Who now ranks among the top 10 most streamed songs released in 2024 on Spotify. Who by Jimin is now the fastest solo song by a K-pop and Asian artist in history to reach 100 million, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 and 900 million streams on Spotify. Jimin's Who became the fastest solo song by a male artist to reach 1 billion streams in Spotify history, tying with Harry Styles as it was at the time who broke the record as the highest and biggest song debut by a Korean act on Spotify US Daily Top Songs chart in 2024. The song debuted at number 18 with 964,000 million filtered streams. Who also broke the record as the first and only solo song by a K-soloist to achieve over 2.12 million filtered streams on US Spotify, the biggest streaming day for an Asian act in history. Jimin earned his first number 1 hit ever on the US Spotify with Who. It's the first solo song by a K-pop act to top the chart. Who broke the record of the highest and biggest solo song debut by a K-soloist on Spotify US Weekly Top Songs chart history. The song garnered 9.87 million streams and was the highest new entry on the chart at number 9. Then Who reached a new peak at number 3 and officially broke the record of the biggest weekly song stream by a K-act on Spotify US Weekly Top Songs chart history. The song earned 13.9 million streams. Jimin now joins BTS as the only Korean acts to surpass 400 million streams on Spotify USA chart. Jimin is also the first and only soloist to achieve this milestone. Who became the first and only song by an Asian artist to spend more than 154 days in the top 10 of the global Spotify chart, and more than 120 days in the top 5 of the same chart. Who became Jimin's highest debuting and peaking song on Spotify UK, surpassing his previous peak with Like Crazy. Later, Who broke the record of the biggest daily streams for a solo song by a K-soloist on Spotify UK Daily Top Songs chart history. Who also had the third biggest stream peak for a song by a Korean act on Spotify UK Daily Song chart, surpassing Dynamite by BTS. Who was also the highest charting song debut by a Korean soloist on UK's Big Top 40 in history. The song ties with Psy's Gangnam Style as the only songs by K-soloists to debut at number 1. Jimin did it in only 2 days of tracking. Who debuted at number 1 on the UK official singles downloads chart, and at number 4 on the UK official singles chart. The song becomes the highest solo song debut by a Korean soloist in history. Jimin is now the first and only Korean soloist to have 3 songs topping both the UK official singles sales chart and downloads chart simultaneously. Who is now the first song by a Korean soloist to remain at number 1 simultaneously on both of the charts for multiple weeks. Who also achieved a UK official singles charts all-kill by charting at number 1 on singles downloads chart, singles sales chart, physical singles chart. Who spent a second week at number 1 on UK Big Top 40. Jimin became the first and only Korean soloist to spend 2 weeks at number 1. Who was also the first and only song by a Korean act to spend 3 weeks at number 1 on the UK official singles sales chart. It surpassed BTS Butter and Dynamite. At number 37, Jimin's Who became the first and only song by a K-soloist to enter the top 50 of the UK Apple Music All Genre chart. Later, Who at number 33 was the second highest peak song by K-pop act on UK Apple Music All Genre, surpassing Butter at number 35 and Dynamite at number 38. Jimin's Who was the highest peak song by Korean soloists on Apple Music UK Daily Top 100 chart, surpassing JK's and Latto's 7. And while making this video, Who reached a new peak at number 47 on this chart and is still the highest peak song by a Korean male soloist. Jimin was also the first and only K-pop soloist to enter the top 50 on Apple Music UK All Genre chart. This is a very hard chart for a foreign act to chart in. Right now, Who is charting in the top 35 and is the highest charting solo song by a Korean soloist. who is also the longest charting solo song by a K-pop soloist on the UK official singles chart this decade, who joined Gangnam Style by Psy as the only songs by K-soloists in history to spend 10 weeks inside the top 10 on both the UK official singles sales and downloads chart, who is also the longest-running K-soloist song on the UK official streaming and audio charts. Jimin's, who is now the fastest song by a K-soloist to be Brit certified silver in history. It has already sold over 200,000 units in the UK. Jimin's, who is the fastest song by K-pop solo artist to be certified silver in the United Kingdom since Psy's Gangnam Style. Jimin's, who has now spent 130 days on Spotify UK, extending its own record as the first and only song by a K-pop soloist to achieve this. Jimin's, who is now the most streamed song by a male K-pop soloist in Spotify UK chart, surpassing JK's and Lato's 7. On Spotify South Korea Daily Top Songs chart, who broke the record for the biggest daily streams by any artist. It ranked at number 1 and garnered a total of 360,000 streams. It did the same on Spotify South Korea Weekly Top Songs chart. Jimin now holds the top 2 longest charting songs at number 1 on Spotify South Korea with Like Crazy and Who. On Spotify Japan Daily Top Songs chart, who broke its own record of the biggest daily streams for a solo song debut by a K-soloist history. Later it also reached a new peak at number 1 with 444,000 streams. With this, Who broke the record as the first and only solo song by a K-soloist to achieve over 400,000 streams on Spotify Japan Daily Top Songs chart history. It also broke the record for the highest rank and biggest streams for a solo song by a K-soloist on the Spotify Japan Weekly Top Songs chart history. Who is also the most streamed solo song by a Korean or foreign Asian soloist in Spotify Japan history. Overall, Who achieved the fastest all-kill on iTunes worldwide history. The song achieved 119 number ones on iTunes in just 5 days, 10 hours, 20 minutes. Who became the only solo song by K-pop act to reach number 1 on global Spotify charts in 2024. Jimin is now the first and only K-soloist to have 2 solo songs that charted at number 1 on the Spotify Global Daily Top Songs chart. In Brazil, Jimin's, who is now the first and only song by a K-soloist to reach number 1 on the Apple Music Brazil Top 100 chart history. Who is the longest charting solo song by a Korean artist on the Apple Music Global chart. Who also debuted at number 1 on the title's Top Video Hits playlist. Jimin ties as the only K-act to debut a video at the top of the playlist. He extends his own record as the first and only K-act to have multiple videos reach top 3 on this playlist. Who grossed $107,000 from sales and streaming during its first week in the United States, with the majority of the song's revenue coming from streams. Who broke the record for the most streamed song by a K-pop act in US Spotify history, surpassing one of the girls by the week, Jennie and Lily Rose. Who is the longest charting song of 2024 by a K-pop act on US Spotify, surpassing Magnetic by Alit. Who is also the most streamed song by a Korean act on Spotify in 2024. It's the first and only solo song in history to have this achievement. Who recently became the second most streamed K-pop solo song of all time on Spotify. It's now only trailing behind Jimin's own song Like Crazy. Who is the number 1 best-selling K-pop download in the US this year, surpassing JK's Standing Next to You. Jimin's, who has now sold over 2 million units in the US. Who is now the fastest K-soloist song to become double platinum eligible. Jimin is now the first and only K-soloist to have 2 songs selling 2 million units each in the United States history with Like Crazy and Who. On the Billboard Hot 100 chart, Jimin's Who debuted at number 14. It became the highest charting K-pop solo song of 2024 and Jimin's second highest charting single as a soloist. On week 2, Who had a new peak position at number 12 on the Hot 100 chart. This made it the first and only K-soloist song to reach a new peak in its second week of release this decade. First and only solo song to peak higher than debut position this decade. First K-soloist song to spend 2 weeks in the top 15 this decade. And first BTS and BTS member song to peak higher than debut position since DNA by BTS. After the 2024 Christmas holiday season, Jimin's Who still charts inside the top 50 of the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Who beats becoming a recurrent song and leaving the chart and is now the longest charting K-soloist song of the past decade. On the Billboard Global 200 and Global 200 excluding US charts, Who debuted at number 1. It was the first highest debut by a Korean act and male act on the chart in 2024. Who also became the first and only song by a K-pop act to spend 2 consecutive weeks at number 1 on both charts simultaneously in 2024. Who has spent the most weeks inside the top 10 of Billboard Global excluding US chart in 2024, and it's the longest charting solo song in 2024 on the Billboard 200 chart. who also debuted at number 25 on the Billboard Streaming Songs chart. It ties as the highest charting solo song by a K-soloist this decade, who became the first and only song by a K-pop artist to spend 24 and counting weeks on the Billboard Streaming Songs chart. It's the longest charting song by a K-pop act this decade, even surpassing Dynamite by BTS. Like Crazy has sold 2 million units in the US. It's the first K-soloist solo song to achieve this feat in the past decade. It's eligible for double platinum RIAA certification. Like Crazy became the longest charting Korean song on the Billboard Global 200 chart history, surpassing My Universe by Coldplay and BTS. Like Crazy is the most streamed non-English song released in 2023 on Spotify. All songs from the Face album have now sold over 100,000 units each in the US. Like Crazy is still the longest charting song at number 1 on Spotify South Korea Daily Top Songs chart. Face by Jimin is the second most streamed Korean album by a Korean soloist, right behind MUSE by Jimin. Jimin is the artist with the most songs reaching number 1 in all 119 regions on iTunes worldwide. Jimin has also given artists like Ha Sung-woon, Loco and BTS their first ever All Kills. Jimin also extended his record as the Korean soloist with the most songs to hit number 1 on the UK iTunes Songs chart with 16 songs. Jimin became the first K-pop soloist to debut all songs from multiple albums on the global Spotify chart. Jimin is now the first and only Korean soloist to have 3 songs debut at number 1 on the YouTube Global Daily Top Music Videos chart. Jimin was the first and only Asian act to top the Global Digital Artist ranking in 2024. Jimin became the first and only K-act to chart 4 songs on the USA Daily Spotify chart in 2024. Jimin set the record as the first and only Korean soloist to chart multiple solo songs simultaneously on the UK official Big Top 40, with Be Mine joining Who on the chart. Jimin is the most streamed Korean soloist in history on US Spotify. Jimin became the first and only Korean act in history to have multiple songs surpass 100 million streams on Spotify USA chart, with Like Crazy first and Who the fastest. Jimin is the most streamed solo K-pop artist in 4 of the world's biggest music markets: United States, Brazil, South Korea, UK. Jimin has surpassed 12 billion on-demand audio streams worldwide. He is the second most streamed K-soloist and 8th most streamed K-act of all time over all available audio streaming platforms. Jimin now owns the number 1 best-selling K-pop song in the US by total units for 2 years in a row. Jimin officially became the first and only K-pop soloist in history to have multiple solo songs surpassing 1 billion streams on Spotify. Jimin now holds the 2 longest charting albums of all time on the Billboard World Albums chart. In 2024, Jimin dominated the USA best-selling K-pop songs top 10, claiming the top and 6th position. All Jimin's solo songs under BTS are eligible for gold certification and have sold at least 700,000 units in the United States. Jimin is the first and only K-soloist since Psy to surpass 1 billion on-demand streams as lead artist in the USA. Jimin is the first artist to spend 500 days at number 1 on Spotify South Korea Daily Top Artists chart. Jimin extends his own record as the only artist with the most cumulative days at number 1 on Daily Top Songs South Korea chart. Jimin also represents 84% of the total streams of the top 10 of Spotify South Korea, making him the best performing artist of all time on the platform. Keep in mind that only recently Spotify in South Korea offered a free version to its users. Jimin was the most streamed K-pop act in November overall on Spotify Global with 354 million streams, and the most streamed K-pop act for 5 consecutive months in 2024. Jimin has now spent 200 days on the Spotify Daily Top Artist USA chart. He is the first and only K-soloist to spend 200 days on the chart. Jimin is also the best-selling Korean soloist by total album units in the USA in 2024. Who was named the best solo song by K-pop artist of 2024 by Apple Music. Who in 2024, with only 3 months of tracking, debuted at number 13 on the top 100 songs year-end Apple Music charts. On Apple Music Spain Top Songs of 2024, Who was at number 96. Jimin is the only Asian artist on the list. Jimin's Who is the only song by a K-pop artist to debut on Apple Music Mexico 2024 charts. It is the first and only song by a solo K-pop artist to debut in the history of this annual chart. Apple Music's most streamed songs of 2024 in Latin America had Who at number 7 and Smeraldo Garden Marching Band at number 67. Who is the highest Korean act song on the list. Who is also in the top 10 at number 8 most streamed songs in the Middle East on Apple Music in just 4 months. It's the only song by a K-pop artist released in 2024 to be on the list of most listened to songs in Saudi Arabia. Jimin is the highest-ranking Asian act on Apple Music Brazil's top songs of 2024. He is also the only Korean act to land on the chart. who also made it at number 20 on UK Big Top 40 2024 year-end chart. It's the first song by a male Korean soloist to enter the top 20 this decade. Jimin's, who crowns as the number 1 most streamed solo song by an Asian act on Spotify, Wrapped globally in 2024. Jimin is the first K-pop soloist to enter the USA Spotify Wrapped Top Tracks yearly chart with Who. Jimin's Who was crowned the number 1 most streamed song of 2024 in Atlanta and Like Crazy at number 4 on Spotify Wrapped. Who also appeared at number 5 on San Francisco chart, number 2 on the Toronto chart, and Like Crazy appeared at number 1 on the Los Angeles chart. The first and only K-soloist artist to achieve this feat in history. Absolutely no other K-pop artist has shown up on the Wrapped City charts. This shuts down any doubts about its success in the USA cities. 4 of Jimin's songs are in the top 10 most streamed songs on Spotify South Korea in 2024, the most for any artist. He was also the most streamed artist in every category on Spotify South Korea's 2024 Wrapped. On the Billboard World Albums Artists Year-End 2024 chart, Jimin ranks number 6. He is the only K-soloist on the list. Jimin is the first K-pop soloist ever to enter the Billboard 200 year-end chart for 2 years in a row. Jimin's Who ranks at number 5 of the biggest songs by K-pop artists globally in 2024 via Billboard Global 200 year-end chart. It does so with only 12 weeks tracking time. Who also ranks at number 74 on Billboard year-end streaming songs chart. Jimin's Who becomes the first song by a Korean soloist since Psy's Gangnam Style to debut on the chart. Jimin made history as the first, highest, and only Korean soloist and second Korean act behind BTS to rank on the 2024 US Hit Song Revenue Year-End chart with Who, ranking at number 28 and earning $1.8 million in just 5 months. Jimin's Who at number 33 is also the only song by an Asian artist to be on the 2024 HDD US Year-End streaming chart with 381,000 streams. Jimin won Best K-pop Act category at the 2024 MTV European Music Awards. Jimin was nominated in 5 categories at the 2024 Mama Awards, and became the first K-pop soloist to win a Daesang at Mama Awards since Taeyong in 2014. At Korean Grand Music Awards, Jimin was nominated for Best Song, Best Artist, and Trend of the Year. He won the Best Song. Jimin won International Rising Artist and International Hit of the Year at the 2024 Break Tudo Awards in Brazil. Jimin won a Physical Award at the 9th Asian Artist Awards for the Best Solo Musician. Jimin was crowned as the International Male Artist of the Year at the 2024 Pure Charts Awards in France. Right now, Jimin is nominated for Global Artist Award and Artist of the Year at Hanteo Music Awards 2024. Jimin also received 2 nominations at the Billboard Music Awards, Top Global K-Pop Artist and Top Global K-Pop Song. Jimin was also nominated at China Year-End Awards 2024 with MUSE's Best-Selling Album. Gallup Korea survey ranked Jimin as the number 9 best K-pop soloist of the 21st century. The Hollywood Reporter unveils its top 25 biggest artists of 2024, and Jimin is ranked at number 11 and was the only K-pop act in the top 50. The Hollywood Reporter is an American digital and print magazine which focuses on the Hollywood film, television, and entertainment industries. Jimin sets a new worldwide record as the first and only person in the world to have over 23+ related keywords and hashtags occupying Twitter's worldwide trends simultaneously for the 5th year in a row. According to the 2024 Global K-pop Merch Trend Report, Jimin's photo card set a record for the most expensive star merchandise sold in the past year on Bunjang, South Korea's largest online second-hand trading platform. It sold for 3 million Korean won. Jimin was among the most listened to in the sky or mentioned by airlines from around the world. Emirates most watched and listened to content in the sky, Jimin. Air Canada's Best of 2023 hit list, Like Crazy. Singapore Airlines Best of 2024, Who. Jimin's exhibition The Truth Untold was the most popular and best-selling event in Los Angeles, ranking number 1 out of all the experiences and tours happening daily, surpassing JK's Golden The Moment exhibition in La, which trended at number 10, becoming the highest Asian act. Jimin's Like Crazy has been recognized as one of the most performed songs of the year at the 2024 BMI London Awards. It's among the songs that received the most performances on terrestrial radio, satellite radio, and digital streaming services over the past year. Jimin's Like Crazy is the first song performed by a K-pop soloist to ever be honored in the BMI London Awards. It stands alongside BTS's Dynamite as the only songs by K-pop acts to achieve this. Consequence of Sound crowned Jimin's Who as the most impactful K-pop song of 2024. If we were to sit here and list out all the records broken by Jimin's 2024 single, Who, we'd be here all day. Rolling Stone India named Who by Jimin as one of the 10 best K-pop songs of 2024. The ambient lighting, Jimin's dance moves, signature tone, unique vocals, and the music, the strings, rhythms, and synth notes all coalesce into something surreal. These were most of the things that happened in 2024. I didn't mention every little thing so the video doesn't get too long. Keep in mind that Jimin does all of this while being in the military and not doing any promotions.